Chapter 16, Waiting in the Dark. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10. The Graduate's Departure. The planet's sun cast long shadows across the landing pad as Wade, Jay, and the other recent graduates of the Drop Insertion School, DIS, waited in tense silence. Their eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of the transport that would take them to their next challenge. Deep Space Ranger School on Earth. The air was thick with anticipation and nervous energy. Wade's mind wandered back to the grueling weeks of DIS training they had just endured. The bone-crushing G-forces of the crazy D-drops, the terrifying precision of high-altitude insertions, and the ever-present specter of danger that had claimed one of their own. They had emerged stronger, more focused, and with a newfound respect for the razor's edge, they walked as aspiring rangers. A low rumble in the distance caught their attention. As the sound grew louder, a familiar silhouette appeared on the horizon. The Argus, the same aging transport ship that had brought Wade to boot camp, was approaching for landing. "Well, would you look at that?" Jay muttered, a wry grin spreading across his face. "Our old friends come to give us another ride." Wade nodded, a mix of emotions churning in his gut. The Argus held memories of his journey to become a Marine, a time that felt like ages ago. Now it would carry them towards their ultimate goal, becoming Deep Space Rangers. As the Argus touched down, kicking up a cloud of dust, Sergeant Schwartz's voice cut through the din. "All right, Rangers, grab your gear and board in an orderly fashion. Your next adventure awaits." He saluted them, farewell. The recruits filed onto the ship, the familiar smell of recycled air and machinery filling their nostrils. Wade and Jay found a spot near the back of the troop compartment, settling in for the long journey ahead. "Not quite the lap of luxury, is it?" Jay quipped, gesturing at the utilitarian surroundings. Wade chuckled, remembering the opulent accommodations of the ISC Dominion. "No, but it beats that first trip to boot camp. At least we're not getting hazed every 5 minutes." Ambush. As the Argus lifted off, leaving the lush planet behind, the recruits settled into the monotony of space travel. Days blended together, marked by rigorous physical training sessions in the ship's small gym, study groups poring over Ranger manuals, and quiet moments of reflection on the challenges that lay ahead. Wade found himself spending more time in prayer and Bible study, drawing strength from his growing faith. Jay and others often joined him, their shared beliefs providing a bedrock of support as they hurtled through the vastness of space. It was during one of these quiet moments, as the Argus skirted the rings of Saturn, that everything changed. The first indication of trouble was a sudden lurch that sent several recruits sprawling. Alarms blared throughout the ship, and the intercom crackled to life with the captain's urgent voice. "All hands, battle stations, we are under attack by Skravic forces. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The troop compartment erupted into controlled chaos as the recruits sprang into action, securing loose equipment and bracing for impact. Wade and Jay exchanged a grim look, both knowing the Argus was ill-equipped to handle a Skravic assault. The ship rocked violently as plasma bolts slammed into its hull. The lights flickered, and the acrid smell of burning circuits filled the air. Over the din, the captain's voice came across the comm. "Prepare to abandon ship. Move to your assigned escape pods now." Wade and Jay sprinted towards their designated pod, joined by two other recruits, Private First Class Mayumi Kato, a fierce warrior with a razor-sharp mind, and Private First Class Bikram Rana, whose quiet demeanor belied his incredible strength and resolve. As they strapped themselves into the cramped pod, a final devastating blast rocked the Argus. Through the small viewport, Wade watched in horror as the ship that had carried them across the stars began to break apart. "Launching now," Mayumi shouted, her fingers flying over the control panel. The pod shot away from the dying Argus, tumbling end over end before its stabilizers kicked in. As they orientated themselves, a blinding flash lit up the darkness of space. The Argus, their home for the past weeks, exploded in a silent, devastating fireball. "Sweet mercy," Bikram whispered, his usually stoic facade cracking. But there was no time to mourn. The viewport filled with the terrifying sight of a sleek, advanced warship, its smooth hull gleaming with an otherworldly sheen, bristling with weapons. As they watched, green plasma bolts lanced out, destroying other escape pods with ruthless efficiency. "They're picking us off one by one," Jay said, his voice tight with anger and fear. Wade's mind raced, months of training kicking in as he assessed their dire situation. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "They'll find us eventually. We need to move." "Move where?" Mayumi asked, gesturing at the emptiness around them. "We're sitting ducks out here." Wade's eyes locked onto the EVA suits stored in the pod's small equipment locker. "We suit up and abandon the pod. We're too small for their sensors to detect. It's our only chance." For a moment, silence reigned in the cramped pod as the others processed Wade's audacious plan. Then, almost as one, they nodded. "It's crazy," Jay said, a grim smile on his face. "But crazy might be all we've got right now." With practiced efficiency, they donned the EVA suits, checking and double-checking each other's seals. As they prepared to open the airlock, Wade offered a quick prayer. "Lord, guide us and protect us in this darkness." A daring plan. The void of space enveloped them as they exited the pod, the only sound the soft hiss of their suit radios and their own ragged breathing. They used their suit thrusters to put some distance between themselves and the pod, then watched in grim silence as a Skravak plasma bolt reduced it to superheated vapor. "Now what?" Bikram asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Wade could respond, the Skravak ship's engines suddenly cut out. The massive vessel hung in space a mere 300 meters from their position. "They've stopped," Mayumi observed, her tactical mind already whirring. "But why?" "Maybe they think they've destroyed all the escape pods," Jay suggested. Wade's mind raced with possibilities. They were alone in space, with limited oxygen and no hope of rescue. Their only chance lay with the very ship that had nearly killed them. "We need to board that ship," he said, his voice filled with grim determination. "Board it!" Bikram exclaimed. "Are you insane?" "Wade's right," Mayumi interjected. "It's either that or wait to die out here. At least on board, we have a chance." Jay nodded, his usual humor replaced by steely resolve. "So how do we get in?" "I doubt they left a welcome mat out for us." The four Marines studied the alien vessel, looking for any weakness, any point of entry. Its sleek, metallic hull seemed impenetrable, designed to repel any boarders. "There!" Mayumi suddenly exclaimed, pointing to a small port on the ship's underside. "Look closely. Every few minutes, something's being expelled from that opening." Wade focused on the spot, and sure enough, a jet of liquid periodically sprayed into space. "Good eye, Mayumi. But what is it?" "Probably some kind of waste disposal," Jay suggested. "Not exactly a five-star entrance, but it might be our only way in." They watched the port carefully, timing the intervals between expulsions. "It opens every 15 minutes, Bikram observed, and stays open for about 10 seconds after the vacuum clears. Wade's mind raced, formulating a plan. "All right, here's what we do. We'll enter in pairs. Mayumi and I will go first, do some recon, then signal for you two to follow in the next cycle. We'll have to time it perfectly and move fast." The others nodded, the gravity of their situation leaving no room for argument. As they waited for the next cycle, Wade offered another prayer, asking for strength and guidance in the face of overwhelming odds. When the port opened again, Wade and Mayumi shot forward, using their suit thrusters with precision. They squeezed through the narrow opening seconds before it slammed shut behind them. The passage they found themselves in was dark and claustrophobic, barely wide enough for their suited forms to maneuver. The walls were slick with an unknown substance, and an oppressive heat permeated the air. "Looks like we were right about the waste disposal," Mayumi whispered, her voice tight with disgust. They carefully made their way down the passage, alert for any sign of detection. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they realized they were in some kind of sewage system. Above them, through grated openings, they could see the undersides of what appeared to be cages. "Skravak hunters," Wade breathed, recognizing the alien forms from their briefings. "We're right below them. They're all in cages, The ship must be transporting them. They found a relatively open area and waited, tense minutes ticking by until the port opened again, and Jay and Bikram joined them. Man, that was close, Jay said, his voice shaky. I guess they'd never expect Marines to come up out of their latrine. They all chuckled to themselves. We need to figure out our next move, Wade said, taking charge. First things first, we need to know if there's breathable air in here. One of us needs to remove their helmet. Before anyone could react, Jay reached up and unsealed his helmet. The others watched in horror as he immediately began to gag, his face contorting in disgust. Jay! Wade hissed, reaching for his friend, but Jay held up a hand, taking a deep breath. It's okay, he managed, still grimacing. The air is breathable. It just smells like a pig farm on steroids. The tension broke, and the others allowed themselves a moment of nervous laughter. They had made it this far against all odds. Now came the hard part, surviving in the belly of the beast and finding a way to turn the tables on their Skravik captors. Discovering the ship's secrets. As they removed their helmets, the full force of the stench hit them. It was a noxious mixture of alien waste and the musky, predatory scent of the Skraviks themselves. Wade fought down a wave of nausea, forcing himself to focus on their dire situation. All right, team, he said, his voice low but firm. We're in, but we're far from safe. We need to gather intel, find a way to sabotage this ship, send a distress signal, and somehow get out of here alive. Mayumi nodded, her sharp eyes already scanning their surroundings. Here's a vent cover. We can enter the interior through here. We should split up, cover more ground, but stay in radio contact. Agreed, Wade replied. Jay and I will head aft, see if we can locate any vital systems. Mayumi, you and Bikram head forward. Look for anything we can use. Weapons, control panels, escape pods. And remember, stealth is our only advantage right now. As they prepared to separate, Jay put a hand on Wade's shoulder. Hey, buddy, he said, his usual joviality replaced by a grim determination. Whatever happens, I'll follow your lead. We'll get through this. Wade nodded, feeling a surge of affection for his friend. Together, he said simply. With a final nod to Mayumi and Bikram, Wade and Jay set off down the dark, fetid corridor. The ship's strange architecture made navigation difficult, with twisting passages and sudden drops. They moved as quietly as possible, acutely aware that discovery would mean certain death. As they crept along, Wade's mind raced with possibilities. They were 4 Marines against an entire Skravik crew, trapped on an alien vessel with no backup and no clear way out. The odds were overwhelmingly against them. But then, he reminded himself, Rangers didn't concern themselves with odds. They made the impossible possible. Suddenly, Jay grabbed Wade's arm, pointing to a large compartment filled with computer servers that looked very similar to human tech. That looks important, Jay whispered. Maybe the brains of the ship? Wade studied the technology, trying to make sense of its configurations. Could be, if we could disable it, somehow. Their planning was interrupted by a burst of static from their comms. Mayumi's voice came through, tense and urgent. Wade, Jay, do you copy? We found something. You need to see this. Copy that, Wade replied. We're on our way. Stay hidden. As they made their way back through the twisting corridors, Wade felt a mixture of dread and anticipation. Whatever Mayumi and Bikram had found, it could be the key to their survival, or the harbinger of their doom. They found their teammates huddled behind a large metallic conduit. Mayumi's face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. What is it? Wade asked as they approached. Wordlessly, Mayumi pointed to a large chamber beyond their hiding spot. Wade's breath caught in his throat as he took in the scene. The room was filled with row upon row of stasis pods, each containing a human form. Men, women, even children, all suspended in an eerie pale liquid. Prisoners, Bikram whispered, his voice thick with horror. They're collecting humans. The implications hit Wade like a physical blow. This wasn't just a random attack. The Skraviks were systematically capturing humans, storing them for some unknown, terrible purpose. Sabotage and salvation. We have to do something, Jay said, his fists clenched at his sides. We can't leave them here. Wade nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. Agreed, but we need to be smart about this. We may still be vastly outnumbered and outgunned. As they huddled together, discussing their options in hushed tones, a new sound cut through the constant hum of the ship's systems. One of the human stasis tubes was mechanically moved over the cages of Scravax and dumped into ravenous jaws of each lashing arm of the insectoids. Food, Mayumi hissed. They are using them for food. Wade's heart raced as he assessed their limited options. They were cornered, with nowhere to run and no weapons to fight with. They had to hijack the ship, establish comms with someone, and rescue these humans. Have you all noticed? He whispered urgently. There's no crew. As they explored the ship, they discovered its true nature. The vessel was entirely automated, run by a sophisticated AI. The Scravax were simply being transported, kept in cages for future use as a ground attack force. Wade's mind raced with possibilities. They had discovered a horrifying truth about the Scravax intentions, but they were still hopelessly lost on how to pull off this daring rescue. The chitinous sounds of the Scravax faded as they moved aft. As they walked, they began to realize there was no form of internal security on the ship. They relaxed a little, giving them the space to talk freely, but more importantly, to think. All right, team, Wade spoke up, his normal for the first time since entering the ship. We've got 3 objectives now. We need to disable this ship, get a message to our people, and find a way to free those prisoners. Jay nodded grimly. Tall order, buddy. Any ideas on how we pull off this miracle? Wade's mind flashed back to what they thought might be the brains of the ship, the tech they had seen earlier. That server room we spotted, if we can sabotage it, we might be able to cripple the ship. Mayumi, Bikram, did you see anything that looked like a control panel near those stasis pods? Mayumi's eyes lit up with understanding. Yes, there was a large console near the entrance. It looked like it controlled the entire stasis system. Good, Wade said, a plan forming in his mind. Here's what we do. Jay and I will head back to those servers, see if we can rig it to overload without losing our life support systems. Mayumi, you and Bikram get back to that control panel. See if you can figure out how to release those pods. We'll coordinate our timing over the comms. The others nodded, determination etched on their faces. As they prepared to split up once again, Wade felt a surge of pride. Despite the overwhelming odds, despite the fear and uncertainty, these young Marines were ready to risk everything to save innocent lives and strike a blow against their alien enemies. Remember, Wade said, his voice low but intense, we're Rangers. The impossible is our stock in trade. Whatever happens, we leave no one behind. With a final nod of understanding, the 4 Marines separated, each pair disappearing into the dark, twisting corridors of the Scravax ship. As Wade and Jay made their way back towards the servers, a quote from their training flickered through Wade's mind. Rangers lead the way. It was time to live up to those words, to prove that even in the darkest of circumstances, humanity's finest could adapt, improvise, and overcome. Wade and Jay approached the alien server room cautiously, their eyes scanning the unfamiliar technology. They quickly realized that despite its advanced nature, the system had similarities to human tech they had encountered in their past. Look for any patterns or symbols that might indicate different functions, Wade whispered. They noticed color-coded cables and distinct groupings of servers. Jay pointed to a cluster with a pulsing red light. That could be weapon systems. The constant activity might indicate targeting or firing mechanisms. Wade nodded, then gestured to another group with rapidly blinking blue lights. Those might be the engines. The speed of the lights could correspond to thrust levels. They identified a smaller set of servers with a constant green glow. Life support, maybe, Jay suggested. It's steady, like it's maintaining a constant environment. Finally, they spotted a section with multiple antennas and fluctuating yellow lights. That has to be communications, Wade concluded. With the systems identified, they formulated a plan. Using their limited knowledge of alien tech and some educated guesses, they began to carefully disconnect and cross-wire specific components. If we overload the weapons and engine systems, Wade explained, it should create a cascade failure without compromising life support. Jay worked on the communication servers, temporarily disabling them by removing key components. This should buy us some time before they can call for help, he said. As they finished their sabotage, Wade set a timer on his watch. We have about 10 minutes before these changes take effect. Let's hope Mayumi and Bikram have made progress with the stasis pods. With a final check of their work, Wade and Jay slipped out of the server room, ready to rendezvous with their teammates and face whatever challenges came next in their daring rescue mission. Meanwhile, Mayumi and Bikram, upon witnessing the horrific feeding process, quickly formulated a plan to interrupt it without compromising the stasis tubes. They scanned their surroundings, looking for anything they could use to jam the rail system. Mayumi spotted a nearby apparatus with a detachable pipe that seemed sturdy enough for their purpose. Bikram, help me with this, she whispered urgently, pointing to the pipe. Working together, they carefully removed the pipe, ensuring they didn't make any noise that could alert the ship's AI. The pipe was heavy, but Bikram's strength made it manageable. They studied the rail system, identifying the optimal point to insert the pipe. There, Mayumi pointed. If we wedge it in that junction, it should stop the tubes from moving without damaging them. Bikram nodded, understanding the plan. They waited for a moment when no tubes were in motion, then quickly moved into position. With precision, they inserted the pipe into the rail system's mechanism. The effect was immediate. The next time a stasis tube tried to move along the rail, it encountered the obstruction and ground to a halt. The feeding process was effectively jammed. It worked, Bikram whispered, relief evident in his voice. Mayumi nodded, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of the ship's response to this interruption. This buys us some time, but we need to move quickly. Let's get back to that control panel and see if we can figure out how to keep these people alive. The four Marines, Wade, Jay, Mayumi, and Bikram, reconvened in the large open area they had designated as their rendezvous point. Their faces were grim but determined as they gathered to debrief their missions. Wade spoke first, his voice low and urgent. Jay and I managed to rig the server room for an overload. We've set it on a timer that should give us enough time to execute the rest of our plan. Jay nodded, adding, we think we've targeted the weapons and engine systems primarily. The ship should be crippled, but life support will remain functional. Mayumi then reported on her and Bikram's findings. We've figured out how to release the stasis pods, but there's a complication. There are no escape pods on this ship. The Skraviks never intended for their cargo to leave alive. Wade raised a hand. There's no need to panic. We are making progress and we are in no immediate danger. We need to put our heads together and figure out how to send a distress message describing our situation clearly. Otherwise, we're going to get obliterated by our own Navy.